Muriel Crestfall sat at the kitchen table, staring at Jareth's coffee mug. It was still there, where he had left it the morning he died. The smell of his cologne still lingered in the house, and every creak of the floor made her turn her head, hoping it was him coming back. It had been 3 weeks since the accident, and the house felt like a tomb. That night the wind howled outside, making the house groan. Muriel wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders. She wasn't expecting anyone, so when a knock came at the door, it made her jump. For a moment, she thought it might be a neighbor dropping by to check on her. But when she opened the door, Corvin Maurik stood there. Jareth's younger brother. His face was half hidden under the brim of his hat, but even in the dark, Muriel could see the faint smirk on his lips. "Evening, Muriel," he said casually, like this was just a social visit. "Corvin," she said, surprised. "It's late." "Yeah, I know." He held up a thick envelope. "I came to give you these." She frowned and took the papers with shaky hands. "What is this?" Corvin didn't wait for her to read. He stepped inside, uninvited, and looked around the house. "This place looks just like it did when Jareth was here," he said. "Must be hard for you." Muriel's chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" "That house deed you're holding," he said, nodding toward the papers. "This house now belongs to me. Jareth promised it to me years ago. It's all there in the will. I just filed everything with the court. You should probably start packing soon." The words hit Muriel like a punch. "What?" Her voice cracked. "You heard me." Corvin's tone was calm, almost cheerful. "I'll give you 2 weeks to get your things. Don't make this messy." Muriel felt her knees go weak. She clutched the papers and said, "Jareth would never do this. He would never throw me out of our home." Corvin's smile turned sharp. "He would. And he did. Look, I don't want to be the bad guy here. But I can't just let this house sit here while you drown in memories. It's time for me to make use of it." Muriel's stomach twisted with anger. "You're lying. This is my home. Jareth and I built our life here." Corvin shrugged. "You can argue about it in court if you want, but I already filed for eviction. The papers are official." He turned toward the door but paused, glancing back at her. "Don't take this personally, Muriel. It's just business." Then he left, leaving the door open and the cold wind rushing inside. Muriel stood there, staring at the papers with tears streaming down her face. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through them. The will inside looked real. Jareth's signature was at the bottom, but something about it felt wrong. Her heart told her this wasn't right. Jareth would never leave her homeless. She sat at the kitchen table again, the house suddenly feeling colder than ever. Every photograph on the walls seemed to watch her, as if Jareth himself was silently asking her to fight. That night she barely slept. She kept hearing Corvin's words echo in her head. "This house now belongs to me." She walked from room to room, touching the walls, the furniture, the memories. This house was more than bricks and wood. It was the last piece of Jareth she had left. By morning, something inside her had changed. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw no longer just a grieving widow, but someone ready to fight back. Muriel called her lawyer, Alaric Dravorn, and explained everything. His voice was calm but serious. "Don't sign or agree to anything," he said. "Let's go through this step by step. If he forged something, we'll find it." After the call, Muriel sat down with a notebook and started writing everything she could remember about Jareth's real will. She remembered him once telling her, "No matter what happens to me, you'll always have this house." Her tears dried. She knew Corvin was lying, but she also knew he wouldn't stop until he got what he wanted. That night, as she sat by the window, she saw headlights outside. Corvin's truck slowed down in front of the house, then drove away. He was watching her. Muriel's hand tightened around her phone. If Corvin was going to play dirty, she would be ready. The morning after Corvin's late-night visit, Muriel woke up with swollen eyes. She had barely slept. The papers he left sat on the table like poison, each page screaming betrayal. She made herself a cup of tea, but couldn't even drink it. Every sip tasted bitter. Her lawyer, Alaric Dravorn, had already promised to look into the documents, but Muriel couldn't shake the unease gnawing at her heart. Something about the signature at the bottom of that will looked wrong. The curve of the letters wasn't Jareth's. She knew her husband's handwriting better than anyone. She had watched him write notes on grocery lists, birthday cards, even silly doodles on napkins. This was not his. But Corvin wasn't stupid. If he had gone to court with forged papers, he must have thought he'd covered his tracks. And that meant Muriel needed something stronger than her memory. She needed proof. That evening she sat by the window again, staring at the dark street. Her neighborhood was quiet, but just after 10, headlights swept across her living room wall. Corvin's truck slowed down in front of her house again. He didn't stop, but she saw his shadow through the glass. He was watching her. Muriel's chest tightened with fear. Why was he so confident? Why did he think he could get away with this? 2 nights later, she got her answer. She was upstairs folding laundry when she heard a low voice outside. At first she thought it was the TV from a neighbor's house, but then she recognized it. Corvin. He was standing near the driveway, speaking into his phone. Curiosity pushed her forward. Quietly, Muriel opened her bedroom window a crack. His words drifted in. "Yeah, I filed it already," he said, his tone smug. "Don't worry, she's too broken to fight back. The will looks perfect. I copied his signature letter by letter. By next week, I'll sell the place, cash in, and she'll be out on the streets." Muriel's blood ran cold. He admitted it. He actually admitted forging Jareth's signature. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone. She pressed record and held it up near the window. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure he would hear it. Corvin kept talking, unaware. "Yeah, man, it's done. She doesn't stand a chance. The old hag still thinks Jareth loved her enough to leave her everything. She'll learn the hard way." Tears stung Muriel's eyes, but she kept holding the phone steady. Every word cut into her, but every word was also her weapon. When he finally hung up, she stayed frozen at the window, listening to his footsteps fade into the night. Only then did she stop recording. Her fingers were numb, her throat dry. She sat on the bed and replayed the audio. Hearing his cruel words again made her stomach twist, but it also gave her strength. This was proof. Real, undeniable proof. The next morning, she met with Alaric. She handed him the phone and whispered, "Listen." The lawyer's calm face hardened as Corvin's voice filled the room. "This is it," Alaric said firmly. "This recording could win the case. But we'll need to present it carefully. The judge has to accept it as valid evidence. Do not let him know you have this until the right moment." Muriel nodded. For the first time since Jareth's death, she felt a flicker of hope. But hope came with fear. The more she listened to the recording, the more she worried. What if Corvin suspected she had heard him? What if he tried to silence her before the trial? Her fears came true faster than she expected. 2 nights later, she was locking her front door when she noticed her doormat had been moved. Underneath it was a note. She picked it up with trembling hands. The handwriting was messy, rushed. It read, "Stop fighting. You can't win." Muriel's heart skipped a beat. She knew it was from Corvin. She folded the note, locked the door, and leaned against it. Her breath shook, but instead of breaking down, she whispered to herself, "You're wrong, Corvin. This time you'll lose." The courthouse smelled like polished wood and old paper. Muriel's hands were cold as she walked through the heavy doors. She wore a simple black dress, the same one she had worn at Jareth's funeral. It wasn't for style, it was for strength. She wanted to remind herself why she was there. Corvin Maurik was already inside. He sat with his lawyer, grinning as if the room belonged to him. He wore a sharp gray suit, his hair slicked back. When his eyes found Muriel, his smile widened. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms, the picture of confidence. "Mrs. Crestfall," the bailiff called. "You may take your seat." Muriel sat beside her lawyer, Alaric Dravorn. He leaned close and whispered, "Stay calm. Let him talk first. The more arrogant he gets, the stronger our case will be." The judge, Selora Vane, entered the room. Everyone stood, then sat again. Her face was stern, her eyes sharp. She began the hearing with a steady voice. "We are here to address the claim regarding the Crestfall residence. Mr. Corvin Maurik alleges that the property rightfully belongs to him under the will of his late brother, Jareth Crestfall." Corvin's lawyer stood first. He spoke smoothly, showing the supposed will with Jareth's signature at the bottom. "Your Honor, this document clearly states that Mr. Maurik is the rightful heir to the property. My client only seeks what was promised to him by his late brother." Muriel's chest burned, but she stayed silent. She clenched her fists under the table, remembering Alaric's advice. The judge nodded. "Mrs. Crestfall, do you contest this claim?" Alaric rose. "Yes, Your Honor. We believe this document is fraudulent. My client was Jareth Crestfall's wife of 17 years. He never once suggested she would lose her home. Furthermore," Corvin suddenly leaned forward, cutting him off. "Your Honor, with all respect, she's just bitter. My brother told me many times he wanted me to have the house. She's only clinging to it because she has nothing else." His words stabbed at Muriel's heart. She wanted to scream, but she held back. Corvin wasn't just lying. He was enjoying every second. He looked at her and whispered across the aisle, "You'll be on the streets by tonight." Muriel's lips pressed into a thin line. She kept her eyes forward, her face calm. But inside, her blood boiled. The judge turned to her. "Mrs. Crestfall, do you have any evidence to support your claim that this will is fraudulent?" Alaric nodded at her. "Now," he whispered. Muriel stood slowly, her legs trembling but her voice steady. "Yes, Your Honor. I do." She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. The courtroom went still. Every eye turned toward her. "I have a recording," she said, raising the phone slightly. "A recording of Mr. Malrick admitting that he forged this will." Corvin's face drained of color. "That's a lie," he barked. "She's making this up." Judge Selora lifted her hand. "Silence. Play the recording." Muriel tapped the screen. A moment later, Corvin's own voice filled the courtroom. "Yeah, I filed it already. Don't worry, she's too broken to fight back. The will looks perfect. I copied his signature letter by letter. By next week, I'll sell the place, cash in, and she'll be out on the streets." Gasps spread through the room. Corvin's lawyer stammered, his face pale. Corvin himself gripped the table, so hard his knuckles turned white. Muriel kept her eyes on the judge, not on him. She didn't need to. She already knew the look on his face. The smug smile was gone. When the recording ended, the silence was deafening. Judge Selora's expression hardened. "Mr. Malrick, do you deny that this is your voice?" Corvin swallowed, his lips trembling. It's fake. She edited it." But no one in the room believed him. Muriel sat down again, her hands still shaking. Alaric placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Well done," he whispered. The judge leaned forward. "This court will order a handwriting analysis of the will and a forensic review of the recording. Until then, Mr. Malrick, your claim is suspended." Corvin's mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked smaller than Muriel had ever seen him. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe again. She had taken the first step. But deep down, she knew the fight wasn't over. The forged will was only part of the battle. If Corvin was willing to commit fraud, he might be hiding something even worse. The courtroom was heavy with silence after the recording ended. Muriel could hear her own heartbeat, fast and loud in her chest. For the first time since Jareth's death, she felt a spark of power returning to her. She had stood up against Corvin, and the truth had pierced through his lies. But she knew this wasn't enough. Corvin was like a snake. Even when cornered, he could still strike. And she had to make sure he never got another chance. Judge Selora Vane leaned forward, her voice sharp. "Mr. Malrick, this recording raises serious questions about your claim. Until handwriting analysis is complete, your petition is suspended. Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Corvin stammered, his face pale. "Your Honor, this is all a misunderstanding. My words were taken out of context." "Out of context?" the judge interrupted. "You admitted to copying a signature letter by letter. That is forgery, Mr. Malrick. And forgery is a crime." Gasps spread again across the room. Corvin's lawyer rubbed his forehead, looking like he wanted to vanish. Muriel sat straight, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She had waited for this moment. She had kept one more secret, one more piece of evidence that would crush every last argument Corvin had. She stood slowly. "Your Honor, I have something more." All eyes turned to her. She opened her purse and pulled out a sealed envelope. Her fingers trembled, but her voice was steady. "2 nights ago, I was going through Jareth's old desk. I found this tucked behind a drawer. It is my husband's real will. The original. Untouched. Signed and dated by his own hand." The bailiff carried the envelope to the judge. Judge Selora carefully opened it, her eyes narrowing as she read. Then she lifted the document for the court to see. "This will," the judge announced, "clearly names Muriel Crestfall as the sole owner of the Crestfall residence, along with a trust fund established for her care. It is dated after the version Mr. Malrick submitted, which means his document is not only forged but also outdated and invalid." Corvin's jaw dropped. His face flushed red, then white. He slammed his fist on the table. "That's impossible. She planted it. She's lying." Judge Selora's voice cut through his outburst. "Enough. Mr. Malrick, your behavior and your false claim have wasted this court's time and caused undue harm to your sister-in-law. This case is dismissed with prejudice, meaning you cannot bring it again. Furthermore, an investigation into your attempted fraud will begin immediately." The gavel struck the desk, echoing like thunder. Corvin sank into his chair, his body shaking with rage and fear. The smirk he had worn so proudly was gone, replaced with the face of a man who had finally lost. His lawyer quietly began packing up, avoiding his client's eyes. Muriel let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Tears blurred her vision, but they weren't just tears of grief anymore. They were tears of victory. Alaric leaned close and whispered, "It's over. You did it." Muriel nodded slowly. "No," she whispered back. "Jareth did it. He left me the truth. I only had to find it." As she walked out of the courtroom, the air felt lighter, as though a storm had finally broken. People in the hallway whispered about the case, some even nodding at her with respect. She kept walking, her head high. Outside, the autumn sun warmed her face. For weeks, she had felt cold, buried under grief and fear. Now, standing on the courthouse steps, she felt alive again. She drove home in silence, the streets passing in a blur. When she reached the house, she sat in the driveway for a long moment, staring at the front door. Her home. Not Corvin's. Not anyone else's. Hers. Inside, the house felt different. The walls no longer pressed in on her like a cage. The rooms no longer echoed with fear. She walked slowly through each space. The living room where she and Jareth had laughed over old movies, the kitchen where he had burned pancakes, the bedroom where they had whispered secrets in the dark. She stopped at his desk, the one where she had found the real will. She placed her hand on it gently. "You knew, didn't you?" she whispered. "You made sure I'd be safe." That night, Muriel poured herself a glass of wine and sat by the window. The sky outside was filled with stars, quiet and endless. For the first time since Jareth's accident, she allowed herself to smile. She had kept her promise. She had protected their home. And though Jareth was gone, his love still lived in every corner of that house. As for Corvin, word spread quickly about his attempted fraud. His reputation crumbled, and whispers of criminal charges followed him everywhere. He was no longer the confident man with the sharp suit. He was a cautionary tale. Muriel didn't think about him anymore. He was just noise in the past. Her focus was forward. She raised her glass toward the stars. "I did it, Jareth," she said softly. "We won." And for the first time in weeks, she slept peacefully, in the house she had fought so hard to keep.